Hello, everybody. For this week, we are going to one of the categories of art that we've been discussing, and it's going to be poetry. I think this is one of the most accessible forms of art that we can talk about. So that's what I'm going to focus on for the week. I've given you a task earlier, which is for you to write or design your own concrete poem. And before we get there, I would like to discuss to you a little bit about unstructured poetry. So I particularly want to talk about this with you today because I know that you've been already like talking about structured poetry when you were in your earlier years. When you talk about structured poetry, of course, this includes the different poems where you're supposed to count the lines, where you're supposed to count the syllables. You're supposed to go through when you count the syllables, that refers to your meter. So meter refers to it refers to the it's counted by syllables because it refers to the length of a line, for example. And then there's also your rhyme and then your rhythm and other details which are key in analyzing or understanding your poem. So these ones are what we call your structured poem because they follow a certain structure. So for example, what happens on the first stanza affects the second stanza and so on and so forth. There are different kinds of structured poem which I'm sure your teachers in your earlier years have taught you. It includes your haiku, your villanelle, your sestina, your sonnet, of course, and others. I would like to start the discussion today with what Wallace Stevens wrote. He said, "The poet is the priest of the invisible." And I think this is a very profound way to start the lecture because when you talk about poetry, it's something that is, it's not palpable. You cannot really use your senses. Just well, of course, you're supposed to read it, but it's the only way for you to digest or for you to get the words. However, it entails a lot of processes wherein you're supposed to go back to your history. You're supposed to learn, or you go back to the wordings that were used. It brings you back to your experiences, or it brings you back to to other feelings or emotions that you may have experienced before. And T.S. Eliot, of course, one of the very amazing poets, also one of my favorites, he said, "The poet's mind is in fact a receptacle for seizing and storing up numberless feelings, phrases, images which remain there until all the particles which can unite to form a new compound are present together." So these are very, very interesting definitions, or what is this lines or quotations given by poets to describe or to discuss the kind of work that they are doing. So of course, when you talk about poetry, the artists are what you call your poets or your writers, and the kind of convention also changes. So because this is an unstructured poem, you're not going to be because it's an unstructured poem, you're not going to be looking into the patterns anymore, but try to look at the nuances, what makes each line or what makes each poem unique and interesting. I like discussing unstructured poetry when we get to Unit 4 or Lesson 4 because it sort of reminds me, or it sort of crosses the line with in visual arts, or in 2D art. When you talk about paintings, it sort of symbolizes this the abstraction, or the abstract painting that we've been talking about. And I think those are, you know, ideas that we need to talk about. Okay, so when you talk about unstructured poetry, this is a form of poetry that refrains from your consistent meter patterns, as I've said earlier, your rhyme or any other musical pattern. So it has the potential to take a unique shape. The poet has the freedom to express themselves, and the words flow along in their own and even path. So there is really no, the way that we create the idea in unstructured poetry is that you are actually free. It's free flowing. You have more creativity about the kind of work that you are doing, about the wordings. You are not required to count the number of syllables. You are not required to count the number of lines. This is what makes unstructured poetry unique, at the same time intriguing. And there are many examples that I have set in here for me to discuss with you today. I would like to start with one of the images poems that ever existed. This one is by William Carlos Williams. It's entitled "The Red Wheelbarrow." It's a very simple poem of four stanzas. Each stanza has two lines. Okay, so it reads, "So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens." And what's interesting about this poem is that it's aside from it's short, of course, is that it gives you this it gives you more focus into the visuality of it. It's not really about, because it's a poem about the red wheelbarrow. It centers or it posits the red wheelbarrow as, something that's worthy of discussion or something that is worthy of poetry. Something as mundane or something as everyday as the red wheelbarrow is something that is interesting, and I think that is that's telling about how gifted poets are, because things that we observe every single day, poets can turn them into something that is beautiful, like the red wheelbarrow in here by William Carlos Williams. If you look at the poem, of course, it's very simple. He used the color, he used visual or imagery for us to for him to give us a clearer idea or a clearer path into understanding the poem. If you look at that, you can see the irony, of course, or you can see the way he used colors to discuss or to show the visuality that I'm talking about, or the imagery, the red wheelbarrow versus the white chickens. And you can read the line, that the red wheelbarrow is glazed with rainwater. And for something as simple as the red wheelbarrow, sabi niya, it says there, so much depends. So there's a lot of things that are embedded, or there are many things that are reliant upon the red wheelbarrow. So this is an example of this is a red wheelbarrow with some chickens around it. So it just shows, I wanted to show this to you to prove my point about something very mundane into something that's very poetic. So this is something that we can study or look into. But more importantly is that if you look at the poem also, it sort of has a shape on its own. And that's one of the things I would like to talk to you about in this session, where if you look at that, you can see that every second line of every stanza has only one word, like upon, and then barrow, water, and chickens. Really, really, really interesting. But if you look at that also, it sort of resembles, or it sort of gives us this idea about, look at that, about the handles of the red wheelbarrow. So these are ideas, or these are things that make these poems really, they are amazing. Like, they are not just about words anymore. They actually represent something that is very visual, and that is, in a way, like what we've been discussing previously about abstract art and objective art. This is what makes art really interesting, because there are other ideas, or there are actually other parts that we can talk about aside from the base level, or aside from the baser areas that you can see, or that are very obvious in here. So instead of just, 'di ba, instead of studying just the words, actually there's a deeper meaning into it if you look at it as a visual text also. Okay, so this is also by Cummings, um, LA. And then if you look at that, it's a very simple poem, but it has a lot of levels. Okay, so Cummings is one of the visual poets. Also, he's an imagist. He loves images. So if you look at this kind of poem, letter L, there's letter L, and then there is ONELINESS outside. So that's loneliness. It spells as loneliness. And inside the parentheses, you can see there a leaf falls. So if you're going to be typing that, it's like, if you're going to transfer the poem, if you're going to write it down, it says L, and then leaf. There it is. Google search already showed it to us. So that's how it looks like. Okay, so it's a poem. That's why the title is LA, because it's the very first line of the poem. And it gives you this idea that there are only two lines, or there are two parts of the poem, which is the first one is that a leaf falls, and then the other part is loneliness. And he turned them into a visual poem just like this. That if you extend your imagination a little bit, actually looks like this. There's like a leaf falls is a visual about loneliness, something like that. So that's what makes the poem really, really powerful. There are many poems by E. Cummings. You just go online. My personal favorite is Injust. Injust by E. Cummings. Okay, so now we are into concrete poetry, which is your final project or activity for the first grading before your first grading exam. Concrete poetry, sometimes called shape poetry, of course, for very obvious reasons, like look at that, a leaf falling and the handles of a wheelbarrow. These are shape poetry. They are poetry whose visual appearance matches the topic of the poem. So there was a you have to make sure that whatever you're talking about in your poem is related to the kind of visual or to the kind of image that you were trying to conjure. So the poetry whose visual appearance matches the topic of the poem, the words form shapes which illustrate the poem's subject as a picture, as well as through their literal meaning. This type of poetry has been used for thousands of years, mind you, since the ancient Greeks began to enhance the meaning of their poetry by arranging their characters in visually pleasing ways back in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC. So these are just a short background. This is also one of the most anthologized. When you say anthologized, they are usually reprinted or they are used by editors and or yeah, editors and authors of textbooks or collections of literary works. So George Herbert, Easter Wings. If we're going to look at it, of course, it's already very obvious that these are wings. But you can see if you can pause this video later and then or right now, and you can go over the poem by yourself. But I just wanted to show to you how the shape can also be very obvious into understanding or into learning about the poem. Okay, so what I want to discuss to you also that's very quite different is Bashful Ones by Jose Garcia Villa. Jose Garcia Villa is a national artist. He's in the same rank as Amor Solo, Alquaz, etc. So the Bashful Ones is one of the most controversial or one of the most talked about poems of Jose Garcia Villa. Now, Jose Garcia Villa, of course, is a very talented poet here in the Philippines, but some of his works sparked curiosity, like are we supposed to talk about these kinds of poems? Do they are we supposed to call them poems in the first place? Like do they warrant the same kind of attention or the same kind of love for poetry that we do for others when we look at the Bashful Ones? Now, if you look at Bashful Ones by Jose Garcia Villa or JGV, you can see that there is a comma, just a comma on the space. Now, I want to ask you, what do we mean when we say bashful? Bashful means someone who is very shy, okay? A very quiet, timid, shy person. And I think you already get the idea. The Bashful Ones is a poem that is written probably on the persona of someone who is bashful, someone who is quiet. So, right, like when you're in a party or when you know someone who is, very bashful and then you try to talk to them or, when they say something, you can really hear them because they are so shy, they are so timid. So, you only hear like sounds or, you feel like they're just whispering. You cannot hear what they are saying. So what do you do? It's like it's like the poem of Jose Garcia Villa, Kaya Siya Bashful Ones, because it's the quiet and timid and the bashful, shy person speaking, and the spaces are the words that we cannot hear. And the interesting question is, why is it a comma and not a period or anything? Of course, there are many, many theories that revolve around that. Jose Garcia Villa was not one to discuss his poems too, but My favorite theory, for example, or favorite explanation was that the comma represents this sense of continuity, which I think is very important. Like whoever we are, like if we are introverts or extroverts or anybody, you can, just keep on expressing yourselves, even if people can hear you or not. But as long as you're able to put your idea or your story across. And the continuity of the comma shows that it doesn't stop. We're supposed to still speak. So that's just a reading, or that's just an analysis for Bashful Ones. Another that is very famous, of course, was Worse Than Bashful Ones. It's entitled Emperor's New Sonnet by Jose Garcia Villa. Now, I don't know if everybody knows or everybody has an idea about the story of the emperor's new clothes, but that is a very famous children's story. I myself heard it from my mom when I was a child. The emperor's new clothes story is a very famous story that teaches about greed and about gullibility. Okay, that you are supposed to be smarter when you make decisions, etc. Now it tells the story of an emperor who is very vain and he's so full of himself. And one time, there are two rogues, people who are, thieves. And then they come to the kingdom because they heard about how proud and how vain the emperor was. And then they said, you know what? Um, we two are some of the best among the best couturier, or the best, best fashion designers, something like that. And if you're going to give us everything that we need, or you provide all of the materials, we are going to fashion or design the best clothing that your kingdom has ever seen, and the best that you're ever going to wear. And so the emperor was very excited about it, and he said, okay, I can do that. And so they set off to work, and the two rogues, or the two thieves, of course, who were very cunning, asked for a lot of things. So they asked for diamonds and the richest silk, or the most expensive stones, all the gold, all the rubies, all of the best gems ever, everything that's priceless, everything that's expensive. And so when they got all of this at their disposal, they sort of said, okay, we're going to work, or we're going to make you your clothing. However, that's not what happened. What happened was they were keeping actually all of the things they were asking from the emperor, because of course they were rogues, they were thieves. And the people around the kingdom have been talking about it. Like they're very curious, just like times when a stranger comes in, and then there's a very big pronouncement. Everybody in the kingdom was very curious about the clothes, and they were just really happy about it. And then when the day came for the king to wear, or to try on his new clothes, the two rogues dressed him with nothing. He was naked, and then they pretend to put a robe around him, they pretend to put stuff on his body, etc. And then the emperor was really curious, like, what are we doing? I'm not dressed at all. I'm naked. I can see my body, and etc. And then the two rogues said, "What is wrong with you? Are you telling us that you cannot see the clothes that we made for you?" And the emperor was saying, "No, I'm curious where are the clothes when I cannot feel anything." And the two rogues were saying, well, only intelligent people, or only gifted individuals are able to tell, or are able to talk about the clothing. And of course, the emperor, who is very vain, doesn't want to be doesn't want to be called a fool, or doesn't want to be called stupid or an idiot. So he said, oh yeah, I'm dressed great. I can see my body. I can see my, oh, very nice. I can see the fur. I can see the jewels. I can see there's the ruby, etc. So it was funny. Now, when he went out, of course, the advisors heard about it. So when he came out, all of the advisors and the people in the palace were like very supportive. They were saying stuff like, "Oh, you look great. You look fantastic. The robes are interesting, and everything that you're putting together is really good." So everybody was very supportive, because they don't want to be called fools or idiots. And so the emperor had a procession. So he rode, it's like panagbenga, it's like the float parade. So he was on top of a float, and then they have to go down. Just imagine Session Road with a lot of people who's going to watch him with his fabulous new clothes. And when he was passing by, people were thinking he's not wearing anything at all. But then they heard about what the people in the palace were saying, that only idiots couldn't see that, and so they kept saying, "Oh, that's a very good one. That's a very nice one." And when they were down, when they were walking, when they were passing by, that's when passed by a child, and then the child looked at the chariot and said, "But the emperor is not wearing anything at all." And so the emperor got into this realization that indeed wala naman talaga siyang suot. Children are not lying. Children are very honest. And so he realized that he is really a fool for believing that. He was so vain to believe in it. When he went back to the kingdom, he didn't know that you know he the two rogues already left, and he was left with nothing. And I know that's a very long story to give a support for the emperor's new sonnet, but it shows just how very meaningful and different this poem is all about. That's why I like if we are in the class, I would love everybody to debate or think about emperor's new sonnet, what they think about it, because on another level, aside from parang ang dating tuloy, you can read or you can understand the Emperor's New Sonnet by Jose Garcia Villa if you're intelligent or if you're smart. That's the idea. So you have to pretend like you know how to analyze it, even if it's abstract. It has nothing really. It's just space. So you have to make sense about it, or else people will say that you're not a very good art critic or you're not a very good literary critic. That's art appreciation. You have to say something. And if you don't say anything about it, just like the emperor's new clothes, then you're going to be dumb, but you're a fool, something like that. So this is a very interesting poem that speaks on all levels. Maybe not into the profound way that poems with a verse in it can be, but I think this is quite it may not be profound as my teachers or as my mentors also told me, but I find that it is something that is worthy of discussion, something that we can talk about in terms of art, in terms of its artistic merit, not really into its literary merit, something like that. Okay. There are other writers, of course, who wrote quite differently. I just want to talk about poetry with you so that you can remember all of these things. You can sort of expand your knowledge or your exposure to poetry. This is one of the poems that I really love teaching, and I love teaching about Sylvia Plath or Sylvia Plath's poems. Sylvia Plath is one of the strongest, most recognizable female writers or female poets in history, or in modern history, of course. Okay, so the title is Metaphors. I'm a riddle in 9 syllables, an elephant, a ponderous house, a melon strolling on 2 tendrils. O red fruit, ivory, fine timbers. This loaf is big with its easily rising. Money's new minted in this fat purse. I'm a means, a stage, a cow in cap. I've eaten a bag of green apples. Boarded the train, there's no getting off. So if you look at this, really interesting about this poem is that I'm sorry, it would be nice to like discuss the poem with you synchronous. However, I'll just explain it to you. So if you look at the title of the poem, it is metaphors, right? So when you talk about metaphors, you are comparing two things, but you don't use the words as or like. You want to talk about the same things that they have. You are comparing them because they are similar in some ways. So the question now is, what are these metaphors all about? And if you look at the very first line, it said there are I'm a riddle in 9 syllables. Wow, so it's a riddle. Okay, very first clue. Sinabi na niya agad, I'm a riddle in 9 syllables. And it says 9 syllables, so let's count. I'm a riddle in 9 syllables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, there are 9 syllables there. Let's just test the other lines. Randomly, the fifth line, this loaf's big with It's is T rising. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Another last random, the last line. Boarded the train. That includes the S. There's no getting off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All of the lines have 9 syllables. So it already establishes from the very first line, Sylvia Plath or the persona is already establishing that this is a poem where you're supposed to look for an answer because it's a riddle. And the riddle has 9 syllables. It said there, I'm a riddle in 9 syllables, an elephant, a ponderous house, a melon strolling on 2 tendrils. Now, there's something that you're not supposed to forget. You're supposed to read poems as they are. So do not stop unless you are told to. Okay, so if you look at this is one sentence. An elephant, comma, a ponderous house, comma, a melon strolling on 2 tendrils. What's similar about these 2 lines? They talk about something that is big or huge, right? An elephant, very huge. It's not just a house, it's a ponderous house. And it's a melon, it's a very huge fruit, strolling on 2 tendrils. Tendrils, guys, is like tendrils is like the it's something that is this is what makes a plant climb. So it needs not just 1 but 2 tendrils because it's very heavy. 'Di ba? Hindi kaya ng isang tendril buhatin yung melon. So it talks about things that are big. Okay? Now, fourth number. Oh, red fruit, ivory, fine timber. So what is a red fruit? It is the melon, right? And what is ivory? From the elephant. What what are the fine timbers? They're from the house. What is this trying to tell us? The fourth line is trying to tell us about what makes the first 3 images special, right? Why do we eat melon, or what do we love about the melon? Do we love the do we love the peelings, or do we love the how it looks like? No, we like it because it is sweet. It's a red fruit, and it's sweet and juicy and watery, and something when it's cold, it's something that you can eat while refreshing at the same time. And the second idea is the ivory. Ivory are the, like, from the tusks. Those are elephants are being hunted because of their ivory, right? Because of their tusks. And a ponderous house is known on some ponderous house are known for their fine timbers. So it tries to tell us lines 2 and 3 are very big things, and line number 4 tells us about what makes these 3 nouns, elephant, house, and melon, very special. Even if they are very big, they are still special. Line number 5. This loaf is big with its yeasty risings. The same idea, right? Like when you put the dough on the oven, the yeast is going to make it rise. So something that's very small like this, after it's baked, it's already very big, right? It goes huge. Money is new minted in this fat purse. So um, when a wallet has a lot of money, this is not a wallet, but if it is empty, like it's very thin, but if it has more money, new minted, so it becomes fat, right? But it's not just any money. New minted meaning it's freshly made, bagong pera. I'm a means, a stage, a cow in calf. So it tries to tell us that whoever is speaking, who is speaking is not necessarily Sylvia Plath, but whoever the persona is trying to tell us that he or she is a medium. Ginamit siya. He or she is a gamit because she's a means, she's a stage, she's a cow in calf. I've eaten a bag of green apples. She's eaten a lot. She's boarded the train. There's no getting off. So what do you think is the answer to this? What is the syllable about? Look at that. She's a syllable. She's a poem. She's a riddle in 9 syllables, and it's talking about big things. She is used as a medium. Ginamit siya yung katawan niya. Last clue. How many lines? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is a poem about a woman who is pregnant, right? She's a pregnant woman. Is she happy about it? Probably not. Kasi, you look at how she said it. I'm a means, like, stage a cow in calf. Ginamit lang ako. I've eaten a bag of green apples, boarded the train, there's no getting off. She wanted to, like, she doesn't want to do it, but she's already pregnant, so she has to go with it, something like that. So, that's how special poems are, right? Okay, here we are. Let's go to the next one. So metaphors is a transfer of the meaning on the basis of comparison. So when you're writing, rhetorical devices such as simile and metaphor are frequently used in poetry. Indeed, Aristotle wrote in his Poetics that the greatest thing by far is to be a master of metaphor. However, particularly since the rise of modernism, some poets have opted for reduced use of these devices, preferring rather to attempt the direct presentation of things and experiences. You write things as they are, something that we are still doing now, okay? I would like to close the session discussing to you The Secret Language by Luisa Igloria. Luisa Igloria is a Cordilleran writer. Okay, she is just awarded as the Poet Laureate of Virginia in the United States just a few months ago. Okay, so I'll just read it to you. The Secret Language. I have learned your speech, fair stranger. For you, I have oiled my hair and coiled it tight into a braid as thick and beautiful as the serpent in your story of Eden. For you, I have covered my breasts and hidden, among the folds of my surrendered inheritance, the beads I have worn since girlhood. It is 50 years now since the day my father took me to the school in Boa, a headman's terrified peace gift. In the doorway, the teacher stood, her hair the bleached color of corn, watching with bird eyes. I cook for tourists at an inn. They praise my lemon pie and my English, which they say is faultless. I smile and look past the window, imagining fathers and grandfathers' cattle grazing by the smoke trees. But it is evening, and these are ghosts. In the night, when I am alone at last, I lie encorseted upon the iron bed, composing my lost beads over my chest, dreaming back, each flecked and opalescent color, crooning the names along with mine. Binaay, binaay. What is the secret language that Luisa Gloria is talking about? Now look at the experience. I have learned your speech. May kausap siya, so she's addressing her poem to somebody. I have learned your speech, fair stranger. So from the lines already, I told you that Luisa is a Cordilleran Baguio girl, and then she's talking about a fair stranger. So it gives you this idea that she's talking to someone who's American, someone from the West, because of the fair idea, maputi ka. For you, I have oiled my hair. So nag-ayos ako, nagpaganda ako. I have oiled my hair and coiled it tight into a braid as thick and beautiful as the serpent in your story of Eden. So whoever is the person that she's addressing here in the poem, that person is the one who taught him or her, whoever the persona is about Catholicism because because of the story of Eden. For you, I have covered my breast and hidden among the folds of my surrendered inheritance the beads I have worn since girlhood. So well, now we know that she is a girl. We know that the persona is a girl because of the last line in the second stanza. So tinago daw niya yung breast niya, meaning she wanted to look more decent. She hid her breast and hidden among the folds of her surrendered inheritance. She also kept the beads, heirloom, mga pamana that she's been working. So there's a fast forward. It is 50 years now, sabi. Fast forward. It is 50 years now since the day my father took me to the school in Boa. So whoever is saying this is probably in her late 50s or early 60s. How do I know? Because 50 years ago yung experience niya na to. Right? This was her experience 50 years ago. Since the day her father took her to the school in Boa. So she is a headman's terrified peace gift. Para siyang inalay, parang ganon. It's not literal, but it's like the father has given her as to another culture, to another community. In the doorway, the teacher stood, and the teacher has hair, the bleached color of corn, watching with bird eyes. So Amerikano nga yung sinasabi siguro dito because of the bleached color of corn being the hair. So right now, what is she doing? 50 years later, she is cooking for tourists at an inn. They love her lemon pie, something that the Americans taught us. And my English, which they say is faultless because she had an American teacher. That's why her English is great. I smile and look past the window, imagining fathers and grandfathers' cattle grazing by the smoke trees. So she is nostalgic. She is homesick. And after all of these years, she tries to imagine the things that she remembered when she was younger, probably, which is which are in the garden, her grandfather and father's cattle on the smoke trees. So the fact that there is no such thing as smoke trees, but the fact that she used smoke to describe the trees shows that it's blurred, parang ganon. But it is evening and these are ghosts. In the night, when I am alone at last, I lie uncorseted. So pagtapos na yung araw, ngayong matanda na siya, what does she do? She goes to her bedroom. She's alone at last, and she removes the corset. So she's like she sleeps naked or she strips away herself from parang bra, nagtanggal siya ng bra, parang ganun. Upon the iron bed, composing my lost beads over my chest. So she's trying to go back and remember the things that she knew when she was younger. And those are her lost beads. Dreaming back, each flecked and opalescent color, crooning the names along with mine. So her name now is Christina, but when she was younger, before the Americans I don't know, baptized her or something, she was Binaay. That was her name. So she was still in search of her secret language. Meron siyang secret language because she speaks English and she's using the American culture probably, or she was westernized. But deep inside, she had a secret language. And that started with her name, her being Binaay. So that's what made the poem really good. So if you remember, there is the word enjambment. Actually, many writers will pronounce this as enjama. So enjama or enjambment is the continuation of a sentence or clause over a line break. If a poet allows all the sentences of a poem to end in the same place as regular line breaks, a kind of deadening can happen in the ear and in the brain too, as all the thoughts can end up being the same length. Enjambment or enjama is one way of creating audible interest. Others include caesure or caesura or having variable line lengths. So going back, Between Walls is like the cousin of The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. Enjama means you cut the lines. Even if it's a sentence, you cut it so that it falls into different lines. The back wings of the hospital where nothing will grow like cinders in which shine the broken pieces of a green bottle. So it's a sentence, but he cut them into poetic lines. That's what you call enjambment or enjama. Ambiguity, it has many meanings. Ganun lang naman. Okay, so I'm going to end with word lines. Word lines help writers to build, refine, and use new vocabulary. Um, I like teaching this because this is also how I learned vocabulary when I was younger. How I sort of expanded my verbal usage when I was younger. So word lines are I find them really good. So I suggest that you start with a thesaurus or a dictionary. You should know your synonyms and then you know how to arrange them. Okay, so you do not say very cold, you say it's freezing. Do not say that it is very hot, you say that it is steaming or it is burning or it is boiling. I think I gave you this idea before. Or when you are scared, do not just say that everything is scary or you are really scared or very scared or a little scared or slightly scared. Do not say slightly scary. You say it's creepy. Do not say that you are really scared. You say you are horrified. Do not say that the movie is very scary. You say that it is terrifying. Okay? So that's what a word line is all about. So finally, as you're going to be working on your first grading project, which is a concrete poem, I want you to avoid sentimentality, not very dramatic. Use images or visual language or visuals. Use your metaphors. Use concrete words instead of abstract words. Communicate your theme, whatever you want to talk about, and subvert the ordinary. Be unique. All right. So I'll see you soon. This is Words Without Walls and Structured Poetry.